Alright, so in this section, now we are going to move further with configuring Redux in sidebar and the product component. The data related to product with categories and the product detail is going to be the same. So we are going to have a single level Redux. The important point here in this section is, in the previous section, I have configured Redux using the traditional way. But in this particular section, I'm going to implement the newer approach, the React 17 approach, and that is the hooks based approach. So all the configuration, that is the map state to props or map dispatch to props, which we had in this particular section, as you can see in the top menu, this won't be part of the new component because we are going to use the useSelector and useDispatch. These are the new hooks which are used with Redux to implement with functional component. So let's begin with that. The first thing is I'm going to define few folders. So I begin with actions, and here I'm going to say product, and this component will have the index.js. Let me also add one more file now. Generally, when it comes to actions, we define constants, which we did not do in the previous session intentionally. So now in this case, I'm going to define action types with constants. So I'm adding a new file saying types.js. Now in this types.js file, I'm going to define few constants. At the moment, the constants are product category, and there will be additional types also in future, but let's deal with this product category first. Let's go back to the index.js, and the first thing is I'm going to import the action types from types.js. Now let's define the action creator. So I'm going to say export const get product categories. This action creator is going to deal with asynchronous process. So I'm going to use the async keyword here, and this will have the dispatch. This dispatch will be passed by thunk. So I'm going to configure thunk also. And here I'll say dispatch, and there will be an action which is going to be a function, and that I'm defining here. Let's say I define the action type. So I'll say type is action types.product category and the data, which will be an array. Now let's also define the mock data at the moment, which will be fetched from the database eventually. So let's say I define product categories object literal, which is an array of object literal. And I'm defining one set here just to show you that, let's say the category will have an ID. Then there will be a category. For example, I give kids, then subcategory. These are the fields which will be part of database in future. And let's say subcategory will again have further a set of data like ID and the name. So this is the product subcategory. Let me define dresses, and we can add more data. I'll say jacket. So this is it for now. Now this entire piece, that is the object literal we have, that we can copy for new data later on. But now here, instead of this data, I will have the product categories. So this is a fixed set of data we have defined here just for the trial purpose. Let's also add one sample data. So I'll copy this object literal, put a comma and paste it again. And let me say men here. And in the subcategories, let me say t-shirt and jacket. Let me also change the ID. So this is more or less defined now. I just shifted the folder. It was in a wrong subfolder. Now we are going to define the related reducer for the same. So adding again a folder called product, and here again the index.js file. Let's import the action types first. And we are going to define the initial state now. Categories, where we have the array. I'll keep on reminding you that this data will be from the database. Now let's define the reducer. The reducer is product. I'll assign the default state and also the action. Now here we are going to put switch case from the beginning, because there are two categories we are expecting in this reducer to be configured. One is for the product category and the other will be for the product itself. So let's say the case of action type, that is action.type, will be first case is in case if it is product categories, then what we want to do. So I'll say case action types dot product categories, the constant. Then I'm going to return the original state first, considering the immutability. So I'll say dot 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 state, the spread operator, and then the categories, where the data which is passed in the action, that we are going to assign. And there will be a default state. So I'm going to say return state. That's it. Put a semicolon. All right. So now more or less we are done with the reducer. Now because we have multiple reducers here, we'll have to update the combined reducer. So here I'm going to import the reducer. The reducer name will be product, and that we are fetching from the product. And here I'm going to say product. So product will be an alias for the state of product reducer. Now let's also configure the thunk library, because we are implementing asynchronous process, though at the moment there is nothing asynchronous because there is no AJAX call, which we are going to update at a later stage. So let me go to the index file and import the thunk library. So I'll say import thunk from Redux thunk. And because thunk is a middleware, Redux also provides one more package called apply middleware, which you need to import. So I'm going to use apply middleware here. And the same thing I will be configuring with the create store. So here I'm going to say apply middleware and name of the middleware. Here you can have multiple middlewares. You can put comma and add as many middlewares you want to configure. We will see that at a later stage, but at the moment we have at least one middleware, thunk. Now let's go to the interface part of the project. So the data which we are trying to display is the product categories, which is affecting the sidebar. So that's why I have opened the sidebar component here. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning, I'm not going to use the traditional way, that is map state to props and map dispatch to props. Instead, we are going to use the hooks to configure the Redux here. So no connect, no map state to props or dispatch to props. Instead, I'm saying import. The first thing I'm going to use is the useSelector hook from React Redux, which will help me to map the state to props. So now I'm going to use the different syntax, because outside the render, that is outside the JSX section, I'm going to use the useSelector. So here I'll say const, the useSelector will return the state. So we take the state at the moment is equal to useSelector, and there will be an arrow function in which the state is passed, which is an object, and that we receive here the same object. Now let's try to just display this value of state. Later on we are going to fine tune this with proper destructuring. Let me just save and go back to the browser, and let me also open the developer tool and check the console. Now here you see that there is an object which displays the get menu, the state. So here we have the product and top menu, everything we have here. So useSelector is basically returning the entire global state, the global store, that is. So the entire object which we have, we don't need that. What we need is just this product. So to retrieve that, we would write like this. I will destructure the product only, and we take the product. Let's refresh and see what is the output now. Let me remove other console in the top menu, which we have tried in the previous section. Go back to the output. Now you see that we have just the product related details. So we have the categories, and this will have the data. So let's go back to the coding, and we open the sidebar. Now let's destructure this further even. So in the product, we can say categories. Now let's display these categories. Alright, so now we have the n level of data. So these are the various options we try to refer the data. Let me remove this console log now. So the data which we try to refer, we see that there is a blank array. The reason is in the actions we have switch case, and we need to dispatch the action with the proper action type. So here to dispatch, I'm going to add one more hook, and that is the useDispatch. So let me put a comma here and useDispatch. And the dispatch will be placed inside the useEffect hook. useEffect is imported. Now I'm going to write the useEffect with two parameters. The first is the arrow function. Here is the arrow function in which I'm going to dispatch. And there is a second parameter. I'm going to put a comma here and writing a blank array so that it executes only once in the beginning. It doesn't keep on executing on every render. Let me also create an object for dispatch, and that will have the reference returned by the useDispatch hook. Now I'm going to import the action. So import star as actions from the place where we created the action creator. So that is the Redux folder. And now we have the dispatch. Here I'm going to say action dot get product categories. This is the action creator. Let me save this. Now let's put a console log here just to see whether the data is retrieved or not. I'll put a message so that we get the idea. This is the specific data. Let's save this and check the output. Let's check the error. Now in the top menu also there is no switch case, and there is no action also defined for the moment. So let's first of all go to top menu reducer and put a switch case here also. Let's remove this last return. Here I'm going to say return state. Let's check the output again. So now the problem is resolved. and now we check the value of product categories. Now you see this, that we have the object literal with the data. Alright, so more or less we are moved further with the Redux configuration in the sidebar actually, but that is the product related information. And this very same reducer will be using for product as well. But the important thing here is that we are using the newer approach, that is using the hooks we are dealing with Redux management. So we are using the useSelector and useDispatch. So now we have the data in the console which we want to display in the interface as well. So let's do that. So now we are going to use the map method. There will be some JavaScript. So I'm opening the curly bracket. We have the product which has categories and the map method. And I'm going to shift the closing of map here. This category we want to make dynamic. I'm going to open the curly brackets, and item.category is the field name. There you are. In categories also we have the C capital. Now you see that in the sidebar the data is coming kids and men. These are the two categories we have implemented at the moment in the action creator file. Now let's implement the same with subcategories also. Now let's change this li. Let me check the field name as well. It is subcategory. I'll just copy so that there is no typo. Now I'm going to run a map on this subcategory. I'll say sub item and the index as well. And this li will be inside this map method. And instead of this quotes, this is going to be the dynamic value. So I'll say sub item dot name, and there will be a key where I'm going to pass the index. Here also I'm going to do the same thing, and let's save it and check the output. So now you see that we have kids and men, and the subcategories are getting displayed. So one section of this main component is done with Redux implementation, and that too with hooks based Redux. In the next section of this tutorial, we are going to deal with the product related information. So the category section is done. Now we will move ahead with product in the next section.